How can you help someone who drinks alcohol and is addicted? Watch this video until the end, and you'll find out why this addiction develops and what you can really do to help the person.
I'm Vasyl Chaika.
Let's get started. So before we dive in, it's very important to understand the following point. A person who abuses alcohol does not and will not consider what they are doing to be something bad or something that is destroying their life. Why is that? Because when they drink, they feel great. From the perspective of others, of those around them, of society, they are destroying their life. But let me repeat, from the person's own point of view, from their own worldview, they believe they are doing everything right. So let's now really break down the reasons why this addiction arises. And yes, we have many theories. I want to emphasize again that these are theories that explain the impact and emergence of addiction on a physical level. The first theory is that when alcohol enters our body, it is broken down by liver enzymes and forms what is called acetaldehyde, which is actually toxic. It's not the alcohol itself, but the acetaldehyde. It is precisely the accumulation of acetaldehyde that actually causes the feeling of a hangover. Then this acetaldehyde can be converted into what is called vinegar. So in fact, this is what is called poisoning. The second theory says that alcohol acts as a stimulant at the level of dopamine in the brain. That is, it affects the dopamine receptors, which causes what? Addiction, euphoria. The same situation occurs with drug addiction. And the same thing happens to people who, for example, love the rush of adrenaline, like when they go skydiving or engage in other extreme sports. The same goes for gambling addiction and so on. All of this is triggered by dopamine, the hormones of joy, the hormones of pleasure. But let's look at this from a holistic perspective, where we have a physical body with a set of organs, and all these organs and cells are controlled by our brain. And the brain has one task: to ensure our biological survival every second. Not your role in society, not being a good father or a good mother or being decent and so on, but biological survival. And in order to survive biologically, you need to assess the surrounding world. And for this, the brain has vision, hearing, smell, touch, tactile, and emotional sensory perceptions. That is, every second, through these channels of perception, even when you are asleep, information about the surrounding world is coming in. And if something negative for a person comes through these channels, the brain will find the simplest solution to block these channels so that, at least for a certain period of time, this negativity does not actually come in. Because you constantly have to make, as they say, decisions for survival, at least to calm down a little. And for some people, alcohol may be the only way. But the question is, why does this situation arise? Why does this negativity constantly attack a person? Is it really some kind of problem? After all, the world seems to be safe. This whole situation arises because starting from birth, a person, even a small child, has certain expectations from this world. And for example, here is a red marker. This is reality. But the child, for instance, would like to draw with a black one. But in reality, there is only a red one. So what am I expecting? That the world will be one way, but in fact it is different. And the greater this gap between expectations and the real world, the more it can lead a person to become disillusioned with this world. And then, the only way to block this is to shut off the channel of perceiving information. This could be alcohol. That's why a person consumes alcohol, with only one purpose, which is to stop being disappointed in the reality they would like to see. Let's discuss what we can do to truly help a person stop drinking alcohol. So, first of all, when we start with the algorithm, we need to clearly understand that a person who drinks does not believe they are doing anything wrong. And I want you to understand this clearly. If you truly want to help someone, you need to realize that they see this as the right path. But there is only this one way. Because this is the way they saw, for example, because that's how people around them dealt with problems. Or when they faced problems themselves, they didn't know any other way and used only this one. This is something you need to understand before we begin. When you understand this from a comprehensive approach, the simplest and most effective way is to find a new path. That is, to find a goal for which this person will want to live again. And of course, a person does not instantly snap, that's it, she stopped drinking alcohol and immediately became the way we wanted her to be. That doesn't happen. Why? Because it's a certain process. She will very gradually change her values and beliefs. And along this path, while she's moving toward her new goal, which she was helped to find, she may stumble. That's why it's very important here to have the support of those around her, where people praise her, are proud of her, and accept her as she is. Thank you. Only in this way is it possible to help her. Because, for example, when, yes, indeed, a person has found some activity for themselves, for instance, she started volunteering, there she helps, there she feels good. She comes home and her wife says, "Why do you keep going there to volunteer? Can't you spend time with the kids?" And that's it. And once again, problems arise. So I end up sinking back into these problems, and the only way I have to cope is that I start drinking again. That's why constant praise is so important. And helping the person see that they are taking the right steps, that's what support really means. Only in this way can we help a person get rid of it. This is at the level of perception. The second very important point is at the physical level. That is, throughout this entire period, while the person is making progress, we need to reduce their craving for alcohol. How do we do that? We actually need to maintain joy and satisfaction in the body. And what gives us joy and satisfaction? What do you think? Of course, it's sugar. That's why we actually need more sugar. But there's a very tricky point here. Consuming sugar by itself doesn't have that effect. And that's why there's a very important point here. We need to use a substance called L-glutamine. This is an amino acid. And when this amino acid is transformed, it turns into glutamate. And in this case, glutamate is actually the stimulant that will produce a sense of pleasure in us through the breakdown of glucose. Thus, when we consume L-glutamine, which we can get from food, mainly from proteins, we definitely need to monitor our diet. That means we should eat plenty of fish, eggs, and meat. If someone finds it difficult to consume these foods, they can, for example, take supplements instead. For instance, in the form of capsules containing glutamine, 2 to 4 grams per day. You can take up to a maximum of 5 grams. But in fact, it's better to consume 120 to 200 grams of cooked protein daily. This will provide the necessary daily requirement. But at the same time, you need to eliminate sugar from your diet. This is how nutrition should be organized to help someone on the path to recovery. Along with this, we should also add physical activity. So what kind of physical activity could this be? Maybe it's just walking. No, what really helps here is intensive training. For example, jumping rope, doing intensive squats, using a stationary bike, running, jumping, and so on. In other words, the physical activity should be intensive. This also helps to reduce dependence. Additionally, please remember that besides the physical aspect, support is always important. So, in a comprehensive way, on the level of perception, on the physical level, and on the level of changing behavioral stereotypes, this problem can be addressed in this way. And most importantly, it's actually not really a problem. It's not that your life is so difficult because your wife is so bad or your children are like that and you expected something different. Reality is what it is. You can change your wife, you can change something in your life. Everything in life depends on you. And remember, I want to emphasize this, what I said from the very beginning. If you start working with a person who is already abusing alcohol, at the very beginning it will be very difficult because they never consider drinking alcohol to be harmful. For them, it's the only way to what? To get rid of problems. That's why, when we praise them together, help them find a purpose in life, balance their nutrition on a physical level, and provide them with appropriate physical activity, all of this will lead to the disappearance of alcohol dependence. And we will live happily and for a long time.